the community itself has been absolutely amazing and so embracing. And Napa has came a long way. And I think that the majority of Napa is reading the tea leaves. People of color are not going to stop coming out here. They are still coming out here to explore, and also there is a market for people of color that are buying wine. So
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello, and welcome to Voices. This is your host, Cynthia Chaplin, and today I'm so happy to welcome Tish Wiggins to Voices. Tish is well known for her brand Tish Around Town and her celebration of women in Wine Napa Valley Tour. She is a wine educator, an event curator, a speaker, and a wine writer, and she's been featured in Forbes magazine, Vine Pair, and Wine Enthusiast, amongst others. So thank you so much for getting up early and talking to us today, Tish.
Oh, thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me. It's not a problem with getting up too early here in Napa, but thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. We were just talking that when I was looking for you, we discovered that you're a native of Cleveland, just like me, and you didn't stay in Ohio, and neither did I. So I moved east and ended up in Italy, while you moved south and west and ended up in Napa. So I think we both made a big improvement on Cleveland. Not to diss Cleveland, but there's better places. So let's talk a little bit about your wine journey. You started out in business and you have over 20 years of experience with consulting and managing multi-million dollar projects for major financial institutions, including Bank of America and Citibank and TD Bank and BMO, to name just a few of them. So what got you into wine? I mean, with that kind of a career, you probably need wine, but how and when and why did you decide to completely pivot into the wine sector?
Well, Cynthia, you hit the nail on the head. Working in banking can drive you to drive you to drink a little bit more wine than normal. But honestly, basically, my love for food is what actually kind of really got me into wine. I was, growing up, kind of adulting, I call it, in Atlanta, and, getting into food, loving great food, starting to travel the world a little bit. And then wine was always just there. And so then I wanted to just continue to pour a little bit more into it and pour a little bit more into it. And also let it pour a little bit more into me too at the same time. But I just wanted to just really started to explore it more and more. So in 2018, I decided that I wanted to get certified in wine. So I got my WSET2 in 2018. And I'll be honest, it really was for my own selfish kind of reasons. I just wanted to be a better steward over my money and be a better steward of learning, knowing more about wine. And, I always felt like I was always relying on a SOM, a wine pro, so then I could be my own wine pro and I could be able to make my selections and take my own journey down in wine, through wine. But the challenging thing, and I think this, is that there are people who love wine, and then there's people who get bit by the bug of wine. And I got bit by the bug and started sliding down a rabbit hole constantly, and I just really started to just really enjoy it. And I wanted to learn more and more and more. And because I already had Tish Around Town, as I was going down the rabbit hole of wine, my followers were also going down the rabbit hole of wine. So it just kind of started with my love for food, and then, sprinkled in with travel, and then there was wine.
I know that bug very well. I've been bitten badly by that bug a long time ago. And it's still working for me, so I get that. Let's talk about your Tish Around Town, because this is such a cool thing. You started it in 2014 when you were still in Atlanta, before you did any WSET stuff. And you said the goal of it, it was a social media thing, was to share your experiences, as you said, of food, wine, and travel. So how did it all start? And what was the initial reaction like? You've got over 5,000 followers now, so something is going really well. What gave you the idea to start Tish Around Town?
Interesting enough, I've always been the person that people would call to know about the latest new restaurants, where to go, what's hot in the city, because I was always, hence, around town. I always tell people the Tish Around Town is more than just a social media handle, it's a whole lifestyle and a vibe because I live that name. I'm always around town. And so, from having supper clubs with friends to always going to the, newest restaurants, it just kind of grew from there. So I wanted to put kind of an anchor around it and said, okay, I'll start to share my thoughts about what's going on around town. Starting in Atlanta in 2014, always continue, from 2014 up into now. And then I would always just wherever town I was around, I always just share. So if you can always go out there and say Tish Around, hashtag Tish Around Dallas, and you can see some things in Dallas. You can do Tish Around Napa, you can see some things in Napa. So I'm not just around one town, I'm always around town. And it just really birthed from me wanting to be able to share like the things I was doing around town. Initially was a blog. So I used to blog quite a bit back in this day, but then I started to leverage social media more and less from a blogging perspective. And the one thing about a social media presence is that your followers go on whatever journey you're on. So they started to kind of go more on a wine journey with me. So the ones that stayed with me, they're still here, and now they're here in Napa with me.
That's amazing. It's almost like being a virtual teacher, dragging everybody along with you, and you're so enthusiastic. I love the Tish Around Town. I did not know you could hashtag and add in a town name. So that's a great piece of information. I'm going to do that the next time I'm in the States. So, you know, what made you decide to move out to Napa? It's like, let's pick a difficult place to go. You've said yeah, you've said living there allows you to learn about viticulture and winemaking firsthand, and I really get that. But what else made you pick up sticks and commit to living in Northern California?
For me, I get this question quite a bit, and my first response usually is, "I'm out here chasing my wine dreams." At the end of the day, that's the simple question. I mean, that's a simple answer to the question. I'm chasing my wine dreams. When I really sat down and I thought about what I wanted to do, when I grow up, I always kept on saying, okay, I work in IT and it's great working in IT, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So what do I want to do when I grow up? Once I found wine, I was like, okay, I know I want to do wine. So, but now what in wine do I want to do when I grow up? And so it took me quite a few years to kind of figure out exactly where in the wine world I would land. So you know, took some time, really thought about it, and just made the decision that if I will make it anywhere in wine, why not go to what I would consider to be, the mothership of wine here in the United States? So I just like if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna try it. If I'm gonna jump in, I'm jumping in. Head first, and let's see what goes. What happens. And 2 years later, best decision that I made. Best decision that I made.
That is fantastic. I love it when I hear somebody who really, took a huge risk and it worked out well. So I know that feeling very well. I have a few things coming up the road towards me that have been long time dream, big risk. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really happy to hear that Napa is working out for you. And in a recent Forbes article about you, the author wrote, and I thought this was very interesting, that a question hangs in the air in Napa Valley, and the question is who belongs there. And we're talking about the fact that Napa has not always been the most diverse place in the wine world, still isn't. Um, and when you visited Napa and then moved out there, how do you think people perceived you as a Black woman in the California wine scene? I mean, things have gotten better since last time I was there, but how was it for you?
If I go back to my very first time coming out to Napa, which would have been like early 2000s, um, it was just something about this place that was extremely magical. And this was even before I really like started to get more into wine, right? It was just always something magical. And so from then, when I would come kind of like every other year. And then in the latter years, I was coming like once a year. So every time I would come, I was just so amazed. And I was like, man, people actually like live here. It was just always just this magical place. And funny enough, this is also a funny story about me. So when I was really thinking about moving to Napa, I would say, "Oh yeah, I'm seriously thinking about moving to Napa." People say, "You're moving to Northern California?" I'm like, "Oh, you moving to California?" I'll say, "No, I'm moving to Napa," because I would like take it out of California, to be honest, because I never would have thought that I would enjoy really living in California.
That's a super good point. Napa is not really indicative of California. It's its own place.
It's stuck in its old place. So that's kind of how I would kind of approach it. Kind of, I was just like, no, 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 I'm not moving to California. Who moved to California? I'm actually moving to Napa. This 30-mile by, 5 to 6 mile radius. That's where I'm moving to, not California. Never that. So that was always kind of like my inner going joke. But, you know, once I got out here and I had a chance to really interact and had a chance to really spend time in the actual community itself. What the perception is of Napa from a tourist perspective is so different from when you live here and you're part of the community. Um, is it challenging living in a space where you don't see a lot of people that look like you? Yes. Any challenges? I'll be honest, it's been more so a misconception by a tourist versus someone who's in the community, to be honest.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's have I had some challenges? Have I had someone to say a microaggression or two? I can give some examples. I can get someone to I can be sitting at a bar and someone can say, if the bartender comes up, "Oh, hey, Tish, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm doing great. Da, da, da." And I can literally have someone ask me, say, "Excuse me, who are you?"
Who are you and what are you doing here? Yes.
Right. Like, and it's just really weird because I'm just like, I know you didn't ask anyone else this. Like, you don't ask someone, who are you? It's just like, I know you have to be someone for someone to treat you like this. By no means could you live here. You know what I'm saying? No, no means could you be it's just really weird sometimes. So it's just little things like that, or I'll get, so do you stay in the area? And I say, yes, I live in Napa. Do you actually live in Napa?
It's amazing. People can just be so so absolutely unaware of rudeness and bias. It's incredible.
Yes. So I'll just say my address is Napa. Would you like to know the zip code? So it's just interesting things. So I just I say all that to say I feel like the community itself has been absolutely amazing and so embracing. And Napa has came a long way. And I think that the majority of Napa is reading the tea leaves. People of color are not going to stop coming out here. They are still coming out here to explore, and also there is a market for people of color that are buying wine, so they can sit on the back burner and not try to capitalize on, being able to market to that market, or be left in the wind. So it's up to the producers if they're not there. But I can say is that all of the wineries and the individuals I partner with out here, they're ready for any and everything that's going on, mainly in regards to making sure that people of color are come out to Napa and feel comfortable.
That's so good to hear. I mean, statistically, we know that, young women of color under the age of 40 are one of the fastest growing, wine buying markets in the whole world. Not just in the States, but it's the first time in history that, young women of color under 40 have their own money. They're not married, they don't have kids, they have a good job, and they want to have fun. And they're curious and they're brave and they travel and they drink wine. And you, as you said, you're being foolish if you ignore that market. So I'm really glad to hear that that is the way that Napa is looking at things. Um, especially right now, especially in the administration that you're having to deal with over there. We all know diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging, which is something that you added, and I've never seen that added to the typical DEI conversation. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed that. But these are the subjects of contention and attack in many places around the world, not just in the States. So you've said you've noticed some progress, and things are getting better, and Napa's come a long way. But momentum around DEIB isn't as strong as it was a few years ago, which makes me quite concerned, to be perfectly honest. So I'd love to hear your take on what's happening with the wine industry regarding a genuine commitment to DEIB. What do you think can be done to consolidate and elevate DEIB initiatives in wine in California?
I feel like people just being a little bit more intentional in understanding that you may have to take a few extra steps to make sure that you are being intentional. Like, for example, really taking a hard look at your organization and, making sure that, different people are, are represented within your organization. If they are not, taking that extra effort to see how can they, from the DEIB perspective, since people don't want to talk about DEI and it's like a bad word, I wanted to add another letter to it, so it can continue to be a bad word.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I've had backlash about DEI, which I'm really passionate about. I don't think of it as, a woke term or anything like that. I'm really passionate about diversity and equity and inclusion. And it feels uncomfortable that it's become a bad word. So I like it that you added B to the end of it, and I'm going to steal that and use it.
Yes, yes. I just think that that's just that extra little because at the end of the day, you got, yes, you want a place that's diverse, you want a place that's equitable, you want a place that's inclusive, but you also want to make sure that people feel like they also belong in that place.
Absolutely.
It does feel a little bit different that okay, they have checked the box of D, E, and I, but do I really belong here? That's another extra step too, and just making sure that people feel comfortable in all aspects of your job, all aspects of the surroundings, all aspects of the office environment or in the vines, in the cellar, in a production room. I mean, just the whole nine, just making sure that people feel comfortable. So I definitely think that after everything that happened with George Floyd, of course, everyone was off to the gates, and they had, DEI, departments, they had DEI, areas. Everything was so focused on DEI. It was great. It felt good. But we saw as the years went on, the steam behind it just slowed and slowed. So then you start to think, okay, was that from a performative perspective? So then you had to take a step back and say, okay, now is this performative or is this genuine? Right? Few more years go on and now it's like, oh, close down all of the departments, get rid of all of these people, do not use that term, don't say this, we can't say that, it's just, and you just watched it, it's like almost just being erased, it's just similar to with our current administration. I mean, they're slowly but surely trying to erase certain parts of people culture and history, i.e., the African American history, slowly but surely, So we have to just make sure that I know I'm just one person, but I just want to still make sure that the little bit of mountaintop that I can scream from, I will make sure that I still scream, DEIB and also say the words, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, just making sure that those terms are still prevalent.
I am completely with you. I'm a screamer too. So I think, yeah, I think that pushing back and raising our voice and being loud and insistent is going to be important. So I'm glad to hear that that's something that you got on your agenda too. So I'm going to turn us away from this sort of depressing topic, but let's talk about the celebration of women in wine in Napa Valley Tour. This is a very cool idea. What gave you the idea to focus so specifically on women in wine in Napa? And how's it going? Who are your clients? How do you select the producers? What is one of your tours like? How did this all come together?
So in 2022 was my very first celebration Woman of Wine, and it was as a tour. This was me basically, getting together. I built out a tour that had, availability for 20 amazing wine enthusiasts from across the United States. And my main reason for wanting to do it is that as sometimes feeling like the underdog, being an African American woman, check. Then also being a woman, check. Underdog two times two. I just always feel like sometimes you need an extra little leg up. You need an extra voice. In the space and place of the world of wine, it's so male dominant, but there are so many amazing women that is actually holding up this actual industry in itself. So when thinking about the producers and thinking about people who will be featured on the actual tour itself, right? I look at places that are owned by women. So whether it's co-owned, with, by female, so husband and wife team, or even sometimes if the husband is the quote unquote owner, but he has an amazing wife. For him to be as successful as he is, his wife is at home holding up the pillars in the house, which allows him to be successful. So sometimes that producer can make the actual tour itself. Also like to make sure that I focus on female winemakers. I love to tell the stories or share the stories of an amazing female winemaker, because not only sometimes is she just, she's holding up her home, she's holding up the winery, she also has kids. Sometimes these women are timing having their kids based on harvest. I mean, it's just so many amazing stories that are out there that I feel like more people need to be able to hear. And then the third criteria that I look for in like picking producers is that sometimes the person that holds up the actual winery or makes that winery shine. So for the third criteria, I also look for the wineries and producers that they may not be owned by a woman, and they may not be owned by a woman, and or they may not have a female winemaker, but someone in that organization is a female that is leading the pack. So whether it is your director of hospitality, whether it's the person over national sales, it's some female in your organization that deserves to be celebrated and deserves to be highlighted. So that's how I kind of go about making sure that we're able to tell those stories, because it comes in different shape, form, or fashion. Maybe it's your viticulturalist. It's so many different aspects of wine that makes a brand tick that sometimes we need to hear all of the different stories. So that's how I go through selecting. I had the privilege and honor of starting Celebration Woman of Wine and Napa Tour with the help of Demean Estates, which is another amazing female president that runs that's Falana Bouvier. She basically sponsored the very first Celebration Woman of Wine tour, which gave me the vision of being able to say, not only can I do this, and I would also like to take that leap of faith and move to Napa. So I always say that part of this, vision of moving to Napa was me being able to come and feel it and see it, and then have an opportunity to build out something, and then could see myself in this community, all within that, doing that actual event itself. So I just feel like, that's kind of that, but that's that beauty about even like other women supporting women.
It's such a cool way to look at it. Yeah, I like the 3 steps of it. It's a very studied, strategic way to change what you're doing in your life and to do it successfully. So, I love the story behind it. I think it's fantastic, and we're gonna have to get you involved with, Vinitaly next year because we run a series every year. We have iconic women in wine. This year it was 6 iconic women from Barolo who all own their wineries. Yeah, we've got to get you involved in this. Yeah, we've done six women who own sparkling wineries. We've done six women who are just iconic for being groundbreakers. We've done Barolo. So this is right up our alley. This is perfect, Tish. I'm really enjoying the way that you go about planning that tour because it's thoughtful, and we plan our seminars that way too. So let me just bring up the next part about this, because this year in 2025 you went even further than a tour. You developed a whole full events series in March to honor the contributions of women in the wine industry. So I want to talk about this. It's more than just a tour now. It's taken on a life of its own from what I can see. How many people joined in the event series? What was the feedback like?
The feedback was awesome, and basically the event series was a 3 day event, 3 day event series here in Napa. I partnered with Wine Women, which is an organization based here between Napa and Sonoma that continues to help women in wine be able to progress and have a place and space that we call safe to be able to talk and chat, to talk about the business. It breaks up into different forums and sessions and happy hours and network opportunities and scholarships, and just having having your girls club in the wine industry here in Napa and Sonoma. So I partnered with them. Our first event was on the Wednesday, leading up to International Women's History Day. That was a happy hour hosted by Wine Women. It was at Fez Parker in downtown Napa. Simply amazing. We had about 30 to 45 women that came out just to help us in kicking off that actual series. And it was amazing. So then on Thursday night, which is an event that I have been curating since last year, called Vino and Vinyl, at Complin Wine Shop. And that's also in downtown Napa. So much fun. And so basically, if you could imagine an evening with, women, I always say women in the glass and women on the vinyl. So it was playing all women artists and drinking amazing wine from women winemakers. And they were there present to be able to network with everyone. That's a fun night too. And then on Saturday was a finale event, which was a grand tasting at a CIA Copia, which is also in downtown Napa. And it was just a way to kind of really spend International Women's History Day amongst. I had 10 producers there. Great food, great music, and people were able to just really just network and try the different wines from the female-led, ran or owned, wineries, and we had a good crowd there, great feedback, and I'm already starting the planning now for 2026.
I've got to get in on the action of that. It sounds fantastic. And really, as I said, very thoughtful, and your word, intentional. Bringing women to the forefront, not just in wine, including artists and stuff. This is a really, it's got momentum. You can feel it. It has an energy. But you are such a busy person. I know you have a 9 to 5 job for half the week, but you're also the director of apprenticeship programs for the Verizon project, and you're creating opportunities there for underrepresented talent in the wine industry. So tell us about the Verizon project and your role there. What are you doing there?
Yes, it's interesting. The Erasure Project is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Um, as an underrepresented group, have an opportunity to have organizations like the Eurasian Project, Wine Unified, the Roots Fund. You have an opportunity to connect with individuals that look like you. And also at the same time, you have an opportunity to possibly get assistance, seek funding, guidance, mentorship, opportunities of a lifetime, hence in some of the things that, the Eurasian Project and Wine Unify and the Roots Fund have been able to do for people of color that seek interest in wine. So the Eurasian Project in particular, basically, and when it comes to the apprenticeship portion of it, for me, I'm basically the director of apprenticeship. I help them in building out apprenticeship programs and helping people of color continue their journey in wine in the aspects of getting some hands-on experience. So the current project that the Eurasian Project is working on is partnered with Silver Oak out here in Napa. We just selected our fourth cohort. So this will be the fourth rotation for the Eurasian Project in Silver Oak apprenticeship program. And it's so amazing to watch this program grow over the years. So basically, it's a year rotational program. This individual will, go through, they'll move, they'll uproot their life. They will move across country, similar to myself, but they'll uproot their life. They'll move across country, and they will work at Silver Oak for a year, and they'll go through six rotations. So from they'll wind up working harvest. They'll work wholesale. They'll work in the marketing. They'll work from the tasting room, the lab, production. They touch every aspect of wine. And after this apprenticeship, sometimes they're able to stay on board with Silver Oak. Sometimes they're able to get a job within Silver Oak at one of their other properties, being, through Toomey, or if, they would work with Ovid. Or at the same time, they wind up working for another organization that's out here in Napa. But the beauty about all of the cohorts that have been through the program, they all are still here in Napa, working some shape, form, or fashion in the wine industry. So I feel like the Eurasian Project has it right in the aspects of giving people an opportunity to see, touch, and feel, and get really introduced and immersed in the world of wine. And then you can find your way and figure out exactly what you want to do, in my words, when you grow up in the world of wine, and get a chance to touch in different aspects of it. So it's an amazing opportunity to be a part of the Eurasian Project, and also to be able to just be able to touch the lives of individuals who are interested in wine, and be able to introduce them to wine in such an intentional way.
I think this is really important. I feel like we need to be doing more things like this. There are a lot of scholarships out there for education and certification and doing all of these sorts of things, but people need work experience. It's very hard to find a job, even if you have 15 certifications, if you've never had any work experience. So I think this is absolutely key to keeping people in the wine industry. And as you said, it's working. You've retained all of your cohorts. They all still have jobs in the wine industry in Napa, which is an incredible success rate for the fourth time. You said you're just going now. I love the fact that Verizon has recognized that an apprenticeship, actual get your hands dirty, learn everything there is to learn about a winery. People don't understand what careers there can be in wine. They don't know all the different moving parts. So I think this is really, really important, and I'm really grateful. I hope it grows and grows. So you've said in the past that the most rewarding aspect of your work is connecting people with wine meaningfully. Clearly, that's what you're doing, whether through a curated experience that offers a behind the scenes look at a winery, or introducing them to one of your favorite winemakers. And you create unforgettable moments, and that fuels your passion for wine and hospitality. I really, really relate to this. I feel very much the same. You get that aha moment on someone's face that is unforgettable. So I want to know what you've got planned for the next couple of years. When I call you up in 2030, what are you going to be up to by then?
You know, my goal is to take the work that I'm doing here in Napa and expand it to other wine regions. Um, I dibble and dabble in other wine regions, and the goal is to continue to expand it. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of amazing wine regions all across the world, and mainly here in the United States, and even here just in California. And one thing I'm noticing about our current wine drinkers, and our next generation of wine drinkers will likely be doing the same thing, is that Napa is not just the end all be all. people are really starting to explore things that are right in their backyard. So people are really getting into Michigan wines. People are really getting into Texas wines. The Virginia wine region is, picking up, northern New York, up in the Finger Lakes. And people are really starting to, branch out. And I think that I want to be able to make sure that Tish Around Town is not just here in Napa, but across the world. That's basically, that's basically like the initial goal. And at the same time, one of the things I always tell people is that Tish Around Town kind of stands on like three pillars. And and probably have talked about two of the pillars primarily on this conversation, but one being, focus on women in wine, you know, focused on, BIPOC, people in wine. And also I would just love to bring life, my voice to even smaller producers. So all three kind of, some of the things are somewhat underrepresented. That producer that only makes about 10,000 cases, people have to know about them too. Not by all means, I know that our larger producers, I love to even share their stories, and they have the paycheck sometimes to pay me. But for the individuals who sometimes need that extra voice, I'd like to just be that extra voice when I can. So I just want to be able to be that extra voice across, around the world, So in 2030, I may still be here in Napa because I love living here, but my voice will be heard around the world.
I love this. This is fantastic. I'm so glad that we talked today, and I hope we can keep talking together, because I am 100% on board with everything that you are doing now and hoping to do in the future. And I love your attitude and your energy. It's fantastic. So I'm so grateful that we could have this talk today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me. And I'm going to have to get out to Italy so I can put my eyes on you, hug your neck, and have some wine, And it's Cleveland girls can connect. So,
That's right. I think Cleveland girls connecting in Valpolicella, that's the way to go.
oh my gosh. Well, we need to make it a date.
You're on. You're on. I will see you here soon.
All righty. Thank you so much for having me today, Cynthia.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.